The vampire king's hand trembled as he held the photograph of the man he'd sworn to kill, but his eyes kept drifting to the woman standing beside his target, her smile so radiant it seemed to burn through the paper itself. Iskander Dragunov had waited 3 centuries for this moment, 300 years of planning, of gathering power, of building an empire in the shadows of the modern world. 300 years since Marcus Brennan's ancestor had slaughtered his entire family during the Blood Purge, leaving him alone among the ashes of his childhood home. The Brennan bloodline owed a debt written in the blood of innocence, and Iskander intended to collect it in full. The vampire realm existed beneath the city, a Gothic kingdom of marble halls and crystal chandeliers hidden behind glamours and ancient magic. Iskander's court stretched through renovated catacombs and forgotten subway tunnels, transformed into a palace worthy of his station. His white hair fell past his shoulders, contrasting sharply with his pale skin and the black suit he wore like armor. Red eyes studied the photograph again, and again his gaze found her, Penelope Brennan, 24 years old, art history graduate student, worked part-time at a gallery in the arts district, completely human, completely innocent of her family's sins, completely captivating. "My lord, the scouts have confirmed Marcus Brennan's location." Lucien, his second-in-command, spoke from the doorway. The older vampire's white hair was cropped short, military precise. "He's increased his security. He knows you're coming." "Of course he does," Iskander replied, setting the photograph on his desk with deliberate care. "His family has been running from mine for generations, but he's grown complacent, comfortable. He thinks his little hunter organization can protect him." "And the sister?" Iskander's jaw tightened. "What about her?" "Intelligence suggests she's estranged from Marcus. They haven't spoken in 2 years, not since their parents died. She doesn't know about the supernatural world, doesn't know what her brother does." Lucien paused. "She's not part of this war. Her blood is Brennan blood." The words came out harder than Iskander intended. "That makes her part of this, whether she knows it or not." But even as he spoke, something twisted in his chest. He'd studied every member of the Brennan family for decades, learning their patterns, their weaknesses. Marcus was a hunter, a killer of vampires who'd taken up his family's legacy with zealous pride. But Penelope had walked away from all of it. She'd chosen art and beauty over violence and vengeance. She'd chosen light. Iskander rose from his chair, moving to the window that overlooked his underground kingdom. Vampires moved through the streets below, living their immortal lives in the heart of the city's forgotten places. He'd built this. He'd protected them. And he'd done it all while planning his revenge. "Bring me everything on her," he said finally. "Her schedule, her habits, her friends. Everything, my lord. If I'm going to destroy Marcus Brennan, I need to understand every piece on the board." He didn't look at Lucien, didn't want to see the knowing expression in his second's eyes. "That includes his sister." 3 nights later, Iskander stood in the shadows across from the Meridian Gallery, watching Penelope Brennan lock the front door. She wore a green dress that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. She looked tired, he noticed. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying weights others couldn't see. He should kill her. It would be the simplest solution. Marcus loved his sister despite their estrangement. Iskander's intelligence had confirmed that much. Her death would wound him, weaken him, make the final confrontation easier. But Iskander didn't move as she walked down the street, her bag slung over one shoulder. He followed instead, keeping to the darkness, telling himself he was merely gathering information, studying his enemy's weakness. She stopped at a small cafe, the kind of place that stayed open late for artists and insomniacs. Through the window he watched her order tea and pull out a laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. Working on her thesis, he knew. Something about Renaissance symbolism and the representation of mortality in art. Ironic, given what he planned to do to her family. "You're being obvious." Lucien materialized beside him, somehow managing to look disapproving despite his carefully neutral expression. "Half the court knows you've been watching her. I'm ensuring she's not a threat. For 3 nights?" Iskander's eyes flashed red, a warning. "Careful, my lord, you've been planning this revenge for 3 centuries. Don't let sentiment." "I feel no sentiment." The lie tasted bitter. "I'm being thorough. Marcus Brennan is dangerous and I won't underestimate him by ignoring potential complications. Then kill her and be done with it." The words hung in the air between them, simple, logical, exactly what Iskander would have said a month ago, before he'd started researching the Brennan family and discovered that Marcus had a sister who painted in her spare time, who volunteered at shelters, who'd walked away from her family's dark legacy. "Soon," Iskander said instead, "everything must be perfect." Lucien studied him for a long moment, then bowed. "As you command." He vanished back into the shadows, leaving Iskander alone with his thoughts and the woman on the other side of the glass. Penelope looked up suddenly, her eyes scanning the street as though she'd felt his gaze. For a heartbeat, their eyes met through the window. She couldn't possibly see him in the darkness, hidden by both shadows and the supernatural glamour all vampires carried. But her expression shifted, curious. Wary, Iskander forced himself to turn away, to melt back into the night. This was madness. She was nothing, no one. Just a tool to be used against Marcus. But her face followed him home, and when he closed his eyes in his chambers, he saw her smile from the photograph, bright enough to burn. The attack came on a Thursday night. Penelope was closing the gallery late again, her mind occupied with the upcoming exhibition she'd been helping curate. She didn't notice the three men until they'd surrounded her in the parking lot, their movements too fast, too coordinated to be random muggers. Penelope Brennan, the largest one, said, and his smile showed too many teeth. "Your brother sends his regards." Terror froze her limbs. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything." "You have his attention," another interrupted. "That's enough. Boss says Marcus loves you despite everything. Wonders how much he'll pay to get you back in one piece." They were vampires. The knowledge slammed into her with absolute certainty, though she couldn't have explained how she knew. Something about the way they moved, the predatory gleam in their eyes, the unnatural pallor of their skin. Her brother hunted vampires. She'd discovered that truth 2 years ago, had found the weapons cache in her parents' house after the car accident that killed them. Marcus had tried to explain, to recruit her into the family business, but she'd refused. She wanted no part of the violence, the hatred, the endless cycle of revenge. Now that violence had found her anyway, the largest vampire reached for her, and Penelope did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. The vampire's hand never reached her. One moment he was lunging forward, the next he was flying backward, slammed into a car with enough force to crumple metal. A figure in black stepped between her and the remaining attackers, moving with fluid grace that made the other vampires look clumsy by comparison. "Gentlemen," the newcomer said, his voice like silk over steel, "I believe the lady wishes to be left alone." White hair gleamed in the streetlight. Pale skin seemed to glow with inner luminescence. When he turned his head slightly, Penelope caught a glimpse of red eyes and aristocratic features that looked carved from marble. "Iskander." The name came out as a whisper from one of the vampires. "My lord, we didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Iskander's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "That I'd claimed this territory? That I'd forbidden unsanctioned violence in my city? Or didn't you care?" "We were hired," the vampire stammered. "A job, nothing more. We're not from your court, that much is obvious." Iskander moved, and suddenly he was holding the vampire by the throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. "Who hired you?" "Don't know his name. Dark hair, scar on his jaw paid in gold. Said he wanted the Brennan girl alive but frightened." Iskander's grip tightened. "And you thought it wise to kidnap someone under my protection?" The vampire's eyes widened. "Protection, but she's mine to deal with." The words came out flat, final. "Which means you've just made a very costly mistake." What happened next occurred too fast for Penelope's human eyes to follow. There was movement, a flash of violence, and then the three vampires were running, disappearing into the night with supernatural speed. Iskander watched them go, then turned to face her. Up close, he was devastating. Beautiful in the way Renaissance paintings of angels were beautiful, remote, perfect, slightly terrifying. His red eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and protected. "Are you hurt?" His voice had softened, though it still carried that commanding edge. "I know, I don't think so." Penelope's heart hammered against her ribs. "You're a vampire." "I am, you saved me." "I did, why?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment something flickered across his perfect features, doubt perhaps, or confusion. Then the mask returned, smooth and impenetrable. "Because I'm not in the habit of allowing innocents to be harmed in my territory," he said. "And because those men were sloppy, disrespectful creatures who needed to be reminded of proper conduct." It wasn't the whole truth. Penelope might not have her brother's experience with the supernatural world, but she knew when someone was hiding something. This vampire Iskander, they'd called him, had positioned himself between her and the attackers without hesitation. Had spoken of her being under his protection as though it was established fact. "My brother," she said slowly. "This is about Marcus, isn't it? About what he does." Iskander's expression hardened. "Your brother is a hunter, a killer. He's made many enemies. And you're one of them." "I am the king of the Eastern Territories," he replied, and there was no arrogance in the statement, only certainty. "I am beyond being merely an enemy. I am retribution waiting to be claimed." The words should have terrified her. Instead, Penelope found herself studying him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. He radiated power and danger. Yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like restraint. If you're his enemy, why save me? She took a step forward, ignoring every instinct that screamed at her to run. Why protect me? That, Iskander said quietly, is an excellent question. The silence stretched between them, charged with an energy Penelope couldn't name. The Vampire King watched her with those burning red eyes, and she had the strangest feeling that she was seeing something rare, a moment where the ancient predator didn't quite know what to do with his prey. Those men said someone hired them, she said finally. Someone who wants to use me to hurt Marcus. Yes. Will they come back? Others might. Your brother's war has created many enemies, and you're a vulnerability he can't protect. Iskander seemed to come to a decision. You're not safe here. I'm not going to my brother. We don't speak, and I want nothing to do with his crusade. I'm not suggesting you do. He moved closer, and Penelope's breath caught at the predatory grace of it. I'm suggesting you accept my protection until this threat is neutralized. Your protection? She almost laughed. You just said you're my brother's enemy. For all I know, you're planning to use me against him too. If I wanted to use you against Marcus, I wouldn't have interfered tonight. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the parking lot setting. I would have let them take you and watched him tear himself apart trying to find you. Then why? Because you're innocent. The words seemed torn from him. Because you chose to walk away from violence and hatred, and that choice shouldn't condemn you to becoming a pawn in someone else's war. It was the sincerity that decided her. That and the fact that she could feel the truth in his words, resonating in her chest like a plucked string. This Vampire King, this creature of darkness and power, genuinely believed what he was saying, even if he couldn't quite explain why to himself. Okay, Penelope said, but I have conditions. Iskander's eyebrow rose, elegant and skeptical. You're negotiating with the Vampire King? I'm negotiating with the person offering me protection. If we're doing this, I need to know the terms. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Name them first. No killing unless absolutely necessary. I don't care what my brother does, I won't be responsible for deaths. Agreed. Second, I keep my freedom. I'm not a prisoner and I'm not leverage. If I feel like you're using me, the deal is off. Also agreed. And third, she took a breath. You tell me the truth. About you, about Marcus, about whatever this centuries-old vendetta is. No lies, no manipulation. Just truth. Iskander studied her for a long moment. That truth may hurt you. The truth usually does. I still deserve to hear it. He nodded slowly. Very well, but not here. My realm is safer, and we have much to discuss. He offered his hand, pale and elegant in the streetlight. Penelope looked at it, knowing that taking it would change everything. She'd spent 2 years trying to escape her family's dark legacy, to build a normal life separate from violence and supernatural politics. But apparently, the supernatural world wasn't done with her yet. She took his hand. His skin was cool against hers, but not unpleasantly so. The moment their fingers touched, she felt it, a spark of something electric, something that made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Iskander's eyes widened slightly, and she knew he'd felt it too. Hold on, he said softly. And then the world dissolved into shadow and movement. They were traveling faster than thought, through darkness that felt alive around them. Penelope should have been terrified. Instead, she felt oddly safe, anchored by the firm grip of the Vampire King's hand and the certainty that he wouldn't let her fall. They materialized in a grand entrance hall that looked like something from a Gothic fantasy. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Tapestries depicting ancient battles hung on stone walls, and everywhere vampires paused in their movements to stare at their king and the human woman he'd brought home. My lord, a white-haired vampire approached, his expression carefully neutral despite the obvious shock in his eyes. You've brought a guest. Lucienne, this is Penelope Brennan. She'll be staying here under my protection until the threat against her has been neutralized. Iskander's voice carried authority that brooked no argument. Prepare chambers for her in the Eastern Wing. Comfortable, secure, but not a prison. She's a guest, not a prisoner. The Eastern Wing, my lord? But that's adjacent to my own quarters. Yes. Iskander's red eyes swept the hall, meeting the gaze of every vampire present. Let me be clear to all who hear me now. This woman is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or even makes her uncomfortable will answer to me directly. Is that understood? A murmur of assent rippled through the gathered vampires, though Penelope could feel their curiosity, their confusion. She didn't blame them, she was confused too. Lucienne will show you to your rooms, Iskander said, turning back to her. Rest, we'll speak more tomorrow night. Tonight, Penelope corrected. You promised me truth, and I'm not waiting for it. Something that might have been admiration crossed his face. Very well, 1 hour. That should give you time to settle in. She nodded, and let Lucien lead her deeper into the underground kingdom. The chambers he brought her to were indeed luxurious, a suite of rooms decorated in rich burgundies and deep golds, with a 4-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a museum and a bathroom that could have graced any luxury hotel. There are clothes in the wardrobe, Lucien said, his tone professional but not unkind. And if you need anything, simply speak your request aloud. The staff will hear and respond. Thank you. Penelope set her bag down, suddenly exhausted. Can I ask you something? You may ask. I may not answer. Fair enough. She turned to face him fully. You're King Iskander. What does he want with my brother? Lucien's expression remained carefully neutral. That's his story to tell. But there is a story. A reason for this vendetta. There is always a reason for vengeance, Miss Brennan. Whether that reason justifies the action. He shrugged elegantly. That's between your conscience and the gods. He left before she could ask anything else, the door closing with a soft click. Penelope stood in the center of the opulent room, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. Vampires, underground kingdoms. A vampire king with red eyes and a vendetta against her brother. A vampire king who'd saved her life when he could have let her die. She should call Marcus, warn him. But warn him of what? That the king of vampires had decided to protect his sister? That didn't make sense. Not with the hatred she'd heard in Iskander's voice when he spoke of her brother. Nothing about this made sense. Penelope changed into more comfortable clothes from the surprisingly well-stocked wardrobe, then paced the room, her mind racing. Exactly 1 hour after Lucien had left, a soft knock sounded at the door. Iskander stood in the hallway, and seeing him here in his own domain took her breath away. He'd changed into more casual clothes, black pants and a deep red shirt that somehow made his pale skin look luminous. His white hair was loose around his shoulders, and without the formal coat, she could see the powerful build beneath the elegant clothing. "May I come in?" he asked, and she realized with a start that he was asking permission. A vampire king, in his own realm, asking a human for permission to enter. "Yes," she said, stepping back. "Please." He moved past her, bringing with him the scent of night air and something spicy she couldn't identify. When he turned to face her, his expression was guarded but not hostile. "You wanted truth," he said. "Where would you like me to begin?" "At the beginning." Penelope sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly grateful for the solid surface beneath her. "Tell me why you hate my family." Iskander was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke his voice carried the weight of centuries. 300 years ago I was not a king. I was simply Iskander, youngest son of the Dragunov line, barely past my first century of life. My family ruled these territories then, maintaining peace between humans and vampires through carefully negotiated treaties and mutual respect. He moved to the window, though it showed only stone walls beyond. We believed in coexistence, in the possibility that our kinds could live alongside each other without constant bloodshed. What happened? The Brennan family happened. His hands clenched on the windowsill. Your ancestor, William Brennan, was a hunter who believed that vampires were abominations that needed to be purged from the earth. He spent years gathering allies, building an army, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, during the celebration of the winter solstice, when our defenses were lowest and our people gathered in joy, his voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He attacked. Penelope's heart clenched. What did he do? He killed them all. My parents, my siblings, my cousins and aunts and uncles. Everyone I'd ever loved burned to ash while they celebrated the turning of the year. Iskander turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it hurt to see. I survived only because I'd been sent to negotiate with a neighboring court. I returned to find my home destroyed and my family dead, and William Brennan standing in the ashes proclaiming it a righteous victory. Oh God. The words fell out of her, inadequate and small. Iskander, I'm so sorry. Your family has passed down the hunter's legacy through generations. Each Brennan taking up where the last left off, killing vampires in the name of protecting humanity. His red eyes burned. Marcus is simply the latest in a long line of murderers, and he's very good at what he does. But I'm not Marcus. Penelope stood, needing to make him understand. I learned what my family did, what they were, and I walked away. I don't believe in the crusade. Don't believe that all vampires are monsters that need to be destroyed. I chose differently. I know. The admission seemed to cost him. I've been watching you for weeks, learning everything about you. I know you volunteer at homeless shelters, that you cry during sad movies, that you spend your free time trying to preserve beautiful things rather than destroying them. I know you're nothing like your brother. Then why bring me here? Why protect me? She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. If you hate my family so much, wouldn't it be easier to just let those vampires take me, to use me against Marcus like they wanted? Yes. The word came out raw. It would be much easier. That's what I've been planning for months, to use you as the weapon that would finally let me destroy your brother completely. To make him feel the pain of losing family the way I lost mine. But I can't. He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. I watched you for weeks, telling myself I was gathering intelligence, planning the perfect revenge. And instead I found myself fascinated by you. By your kindness, your strength, the way you chose light over darkness even when it cost you your family. You're everything your brother isn't, everything I didn't expect a Brennan to be. So you saved me. So I saved you, he agreed. Even though it complicates everything. Even though it makes me question 3 centuries of planning. Even though every rational part of my mind is screaming that you're my enemy and I should treat you accordingly. The air between them felt charged, electric. Penelope's heart raced, and not from fear. And what does the irrational part say? Iskander closed the distance between them in a single fluid movement, stopping just inches from her. Close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from his skin, see the flecks of deeper crimson in his red eyes. It says that you're the most captivating creature I've encountered in 300 years, he said softly. That watching you is like watching sunrise from the safety of shadows, beautiful and impossible, and somehow essential. That protecting you feels right in a way nothing else has for longer than I care to admit, Iskander. His name on her lips felt natural, inevitable. I should stay away from you. His hand came up, fingertips brushing her cheek with infinite gentleness. You're a complication I can't afford, a distraction from my purpose. Lucien thinks I've gone mad, and he might be right. Have you? She couldn't look away from those red eyes. Gone mad? Possibly. Probably. Because despite everything, the centuries of planning, the oath I swore over my family's ashes, all I can think about right now is how much I want to know if you taste as sweet as you smell. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Penelope should be frightened. Should pull away from the vampire king who'd admitted to planning her family's destruction. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. Then find out, she whispered. His control snapped. Iskander's mouth found hers in a kiss that was somehow both gentle and consuming, his cool lips moving against hers with centuries of experience and barely restrained hunger. Penelope melted into him, her hands finding his shoulders, steadying herself against the overwhelming intensity of sensation. This was madness. Kissing the king of vampires, the sworn enemy of her family, in an underground palace while threats circled above. But it was also the most right thing she'd felt in years, like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. Iskander pulled back, his breathing unsteady despite not needing air. This is a terrible idea. Probably, Penelope agreed, her lips still tingling. But I'm tired of making only sensible decisions. Your brother would kill me if he knew I was kissing you. My brother would try to kill you anyway. She smiled, surprising herself. At least this way you'd die happy. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine, and Penelope realized it might be the first time she'd heard him truly laugh. You're remarkable, Penelope Brennan. And you're more than your revenge, Iskander Dragunov. The words seemed to shake something loose in him. He stepped back, running a hand through his white hair. I should let you rest. Tomorrow tonight we'll discuss security measures, figure out who hired those vampires to take you. And then I'll keep you safe while I decide what to do about your brother. His expression hardened slightly. I won't lie to you, Penelope. Marcus has committed crimes against my people, killed vampires under my protection. That debt still exists. I know. She did. Understanding Iskander's pain didn't erase her brother's actions, and she wouldn't insult either of them by pretending otherwise. But maybe there's another way. Something that doesn't end in more death, maybe. He didn't sound convinced, but he also didn't sound completely closed to the idea. Rest now. We'll speak more soon. He left, and Penelope was alone with her thoughts and the memory of a kiss that had tasted like midnight and possibilities. The next several nights fell into a strange rhythm. During the day, while Iskander and his court slept, Penelope explored the underground realm with Lucien as her guide. The vampire kingdom was vast, stretching through renovated tunnels and forgotten spaces beneath the city. There were libraries filled with ancient texts, training halls where vampires practiced combat, even gardens where mushrooms and shade-loving plants grew beneath artificial moonlight. How long has all this been here? She asked, standing in a grand hall where vampires gathered to socialize. They gave her curious looks, but none approached. The king's protection apparently came with a healthy dose of fear-induced respect. Centuries, Lucien replied. Iskander built most of it after the Blood Purge, when your ancestor drove our kind underground. Before that, vampires lived openly among humans, bound by the old treaties. I never knew. Penelope watched a group of vampires dancing to music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Marcus always made it sound like vampires were mindless monsters. Some are. Humans too, I'd wager. Lucien's expression was thoughtful. But most of us simply want to exist, to live our immortal lives in peace. Iskander gave us that: a kingdom, a home, protection from hunters. We're loyal to him because he earned that loyalty through action, not just title. You care about him. He's been my friend for 2 centuries, of course I care. Lucien glanced at her. Which is why I'm concerned about you. Concerned how? Iskander has been focused on revenge for 300 years. It's driven every decision, every action. And now you're here and I've watched him change in a matter of nights. He smiles more, laughs, questions plans he's had in place for decades. The older vampire's gaze was sharp. What are your intentions toward him, Miss Brennan? Penelope blinked. Are you giving me the protective friend speech? I'm ascertaining whether you're going to break his heart after he's upended his entire existence to protect you. The blunt honesty was refreshing. Penelope considered her answer carefully. I don't know what this is between us. It's too new, too complicated. But I'm not playing games if that's what you're worried about. Whatever I feel for Iskander, it's real. Even though he wants to kill your brother. Even though, she met his eyes. I love Marcus, but I'm not blind to what he's become. He's let hatred consume him the same way your king has. Maybe if they actually talked instead of trying to destroy each other, they'd realize they have more in common than they think. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you're exactly what he needs. A complication that forces him to see beyond his revenge. Or perhaps I'm just making everything worse. Time will tell. At night, Iskander would find her in her chambers or the library, and they'd talk for hours. He told her about his life before the massacre, about his family and the world that had been lost. She told him about growing up Brennan, about discovering the truth and the painful choice to walk away from the only family she had left. Marcus tried to convince me, she said one night, curled in a chair in the library while Iskander sat across from her. Said it was my duty, my heritage, that our parents would have wanted me to continue the fight, but you refused. I couldn't be part of it. Killing based on what someone is rather than what they've done, that's not justice. That's genocide. She met his red eyes. Even if some vampires are dangerous, that doesn't make all of them monsters. Just like some humans are killers, but that doesn't condemn our entire species. Your brother doesn't see it that way. No, he sees every vampire as William Brennan saw them, as creatures that need to be purged. She paused. But Iskander, doesn't that make you the same? You want to kill Marcus for being a Brennan, for continuing his family's legacy. Isn't that the same thing? The question hung heavy between them. Iskander was silent for a long time, his expression troubled. When I stood in the ashes of my home, he said finally, I swore an oath that I would make the Brennan line pay for what they'd done. That oath has sustained me through 3 centuries of existence. It's been my purpose, my reason to keep going when immortality felt like a curse. And now I've met you, and suddenly that oath feels like a chain rather than a purpose. He leaned forward, intense. You make me question everything, Penelope. 300 years of certainty, undone by a woman who chose kindness over hatred. So choose differently too, she urged. Let go of the revenge. Find a new purpose. It's not that simple. Why not? Because Marcus won't stop hunting my people just because I've decided to abandon my vendetta. The threat he represents is real, ongoing. Even if I wanted to walk away, and I'm not saying I do, he's still out there, still killing vampires under my protection. Penelope couldn't argue with that logic, much as she wanted to. Her brother had made his choice, and he'd committed himself to the hunter's path with the same single-minded determination Iskander had brought to his revenge. Then let me talk to him, she said. Let me try to broker some kind of peace. He'll see it as weakness, an opportunity to attack, maybe. Or maybe he'll listen because I'm his sister and he still loves me. Somewhere under all that hatred, she reached across the space between them, taking Iskander's cool hand in hers. We have to try, because the alternative is one of you killing the other. And either way, I lose someone I care about. The admission surprised them both. Iskander's fingers tightened around hers, his red eyes searching her face. You care about me, he said softly. Even knowing what I am, what I've planned. I care about who you could be, Penelope corrected. The man I've gotten to know these past nights, the one who built a kingdom to protect his people, who loves art and music, who kisses me like I'm precious. That's who I care about. And the vengeful king who still wants to make your brother suffer. Him too. Because pain makes us human even when we're not. And because I understand why that pain exists. She squeezed his hand. But pain doesn't have to define us forever, Iskander. We can choose to heal. He pulled her from her chair into his lap, holding her with a gentleness that belied his strength. You make me want to believe that, then believe it. They sat like that for a long time, her warmth against his coolness, finding a balance that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. When Iskander finally kissed her again, it was slow and deep, full of promise and possibility. I'll consider your proposal, he murmured against her lips, meeting with Marcus, attempting negotiation. But I won't make any promises. That's all I'm asking. It was a start, not a solution, but a beginning. Penelope let herself hope that somehow, impossibly, they could find a way through this that didn't end in tragedy. She should have known hope was a dangerous thing. The attack came 3 nights later. While Penelope was alone in the library, Iskander had been called away to deal with a territorial dispute, and Lucien was managing security rotations. She'd thought she was safe in the heart of the vampire realm, protected by stone and magic and the king's explicit orders. She was wrong. The first indication of danger was the lights flickering. Then the temperature dropped, cold enough that her breath misted in the air. Penelope stood, her heart racing, just as the door exploded inward. Marcus Brennan strode through the wreckage, and Penelope barely recognized her brother. He'd always been intense, driven, but now he looked half mad. His dark hair was wild, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his eyes burned with zealous fury. Behind him, a team of hunters fanned out, their weapons gleaming with silver and stakes and things she didn't want to identify. Marcus, she breathed. How did you find you? Track you to this den of monsters? He laughed, bitter and harsh. I'm a hunter, Penny. It's what I do. The question is, what the hell are you doing here? I'm safe here. Protected? He moved closer, and she saw the betrayal in his eyes. You're consorting with them, with the very creatures Mom and Dad died fighting against. Mom and Dad died in a car accident, Penelope said firmly. And I'm not consorting with anyone. I was attacked and Iskander saved me. Iskander. Marcus spat the name. The Vampire King. The monster who's been planning our family's destruction for centuries. And you think he saved you out of the goodness of his non-existent heart? He did save me from vampires you sent, apparently. She'd suspected, but the flicker in Marcus's expression confirmed it. You hired those men to attack me. I had intelligence that suggested the Vampire King was watching you. I needed to draw him out, to create a situation where he'd have to reveal himself. Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. You were never in real danger. I had people in place to extract you before anything serious happened. You used me as bait. I was protecting you by putting me in danger? Anger flared, hot and righteous. This is exactly why I left, Marcus, because you're so consumed by your crusade that you can't see when you've become the monster. I'm not the monster here, he gestured to the door. This place, these creatures, they're abominations, Penny. They feed on humans, kill without conscience. The Vampire King you're defending has murdered hundreds of our kind. In self-defense, a cold voice said from the doorway. Iskander stood there, and Penelope had never seen him look so dangerous. His red eyes burned like coals, his white hair seeming to glow with inner light. Power radiated from him in waves, making the air itself feel heavy and charged. Marcus Brennan, he said, voice soft and deadly. How kind of you to deliver yourself to my door. Behind him, dozens of vampires filled the corridor, their pale faces grim and ready for violence. Lucien stood at Iskander's right hand, his own expression carved from stone. Iskander, don't, Penelope started forward, but Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Stay behind me, her brother ordered, raising a weapon that looked like a modified crossbow. His hunters did the same, creating a standoff that crackled with tension. Let her go, Iskander said, and something in his voice made Penelope's blood run cold. This was the Vampire King, the ancient predator, all pretense of civilization stripped away. Now, so you can use her against me, kill her to make me suffer? Marcus's grip tightened. I don't think so. The only one hurting her right now is you. Iskander took a step forward and the hunter's weapons tracked him. Last warning, Hunter. Release my... He caught himself. Release her. You're what? Marcus's eyes widened with realization and horror. Oh God. Penny, please tell me you haven't been stupid enough to fall for this monster. He's not a monster, Penelope said quietly. He's a person who's been hurt just like you. Just like our entire family. And I'm tired of watching people I care about destroy each other over wounds that are centuries old. People you care about? Marcus looked at her like she'd grown a second head. He's a vampire. He killed Uncle Robert, cousin Sarah, who were hunting his people, Iskander interrupted, who violated the treaty boundaries and slaughtered a nest of vampires who'd done nothing wrong. I gave them a chance to surrender, to face tribunal for their crimes. They chose to fight instead. You're lying. I'm not, and you know it. Iskander's voice was hard. You've read the reports, Marcus. You know your family's history isn't as righteous as you pretend. William Brennan didn't just kill vampires, he massacred an entire line during a celebration, killing women and children who'd never harmed a human soul. Your crusade is built on genocide, not justice. Shut up! Marcus swung the crossbow toward Iskander. You don't get to rewrite history. You're a monster, and monsters need to be put down. Then do it, Iskander spread his arms. Take your shot, Hunter. But know that the moment you do, my people will tear you and your team apart. And your sister will watch you die, knowing that your hatred killed you. Stop it. Penelope wrenched free of Marcus's grip, putting herself between the two men. Both of you, just stop. Penny, move. Marcus ordered. No. She stood her ground, even though every instinct screamed at her to run from the violence simmering in the air. I won't let you kill each other. Not when there's another way. There is no other way, Marcus said, but he lowered the crossbow slightly. There is if you're willing to listen. She turned to Iskander. Both of you. What happened to your families was tragic, unforgivable, but killing each other won't bring them back. It'll just create more orphans, more revenge, more blood. Some debts can only be paid in blood. Iskander said, but his eyes were on her, not Marcus. And some debts need to be forgiven so the living can move forward. Penelope looked between them. You're not that different, you know. Both of you carrying the weight of family legacy, trying to honor the dead by perpetuating their wars. But maybe, just maybe, the best way to honor them would be to choose peace. Peace with a vampire? Marcus scoffed. That's naive. Peace with the king of the Eastern Territories, Penelope corrected, who controls thousands of vampires and could make their lives very difficult if he chose. Or who could become an ally if you'd stop seeing him as only an enemy. She has a point, Lucian said quietly. My lord, perhaps we should silence. Iskander's eyes never left Marcus. I've spent 3 centuries planning this moment, dreaming of it. The last Brennan hunter standing before me ready to be destroyed. Marcus raised his weapon again. Then try it. But then I'd have to watch her grieve, Iskander continued, as though Marcus hadn't spoken. I'd have to see the light go out of Penelope's eyes, know that I'd caused her pain. And I find that somehow, impossibly, that matters more than my revenge. The admission seemed to shock everyone, including Iskander himself. Marcus stared, his weapon wavering. You care about her, he said slowly. Actually care, not just as leverage. More than I should, Iskander admitted. More than is wise. Your sister has managed to do what 300 years of existence couldn't make me question whether revenge is worth the cost. And you? Marcus turned to Penelope. You care about him? I do, she said simply. I love him, actually, which is inconvenient and complicated and probably the worst timing in the world, but there it is. Iskander's sharp intake of breath told her the declaration surprised him. Good. She was tired of being the only one emotionally vulnerable here. Marcus closed his eyes, and for a moment he looked exhausted. This is insane, completely, Penelope agreed. But so is this endless cycle of violence. Marcus, please. I'm asking you to consider a truce, not forgiveness, not immediately. Just a cessation of hostilities, a chance to talk instead of kill. And what would this truce look like? Marcus asked warily. Mortars, Iskander said, picking up the thread. Acknowledged territories where neither vampires nor hunters operate. A tribunal system for violations, with representatives from both sides. Accountability for crimes actually committed, not punishment based on species alone. You're suggesting the old treaties, Marcus said. The ones William Brennan rejected, the ones that worked for centuries before your ancestors' genocidal crusade. Iskander's voice was hard. I won't pretend the past didn't happen, Hunter. But your sister is right, we can choose differently going forward. Marcus looked at his team, at the vampires filling the corridor, at his sister standing between 2 predators ready to tear each other apart. Penelope could see the war playing out behind his eyes, duty versus love, legacy versus reason. If I agree to this, he said finally, and you violate the terms if any vampire under your control harms humans, then the treaty is void and you have the right to respond accordingly. Iskander finished. But the same applies to you and your hunters. Any violation of the boundaries, any unprovoked attack on my people, and we respond in kind. And her? Marcus gestured to Penelope. Where does she fall in all this? That's her choice, Iskander said, but his eyes held hope when he looked at her. It's always been her choice. Penelope's heart swelled. After everything, the violence, the history, the complications, he was still giving her freedom. Still refusing to treat her as property or leverage. I choose both of you, she said. My brother and the man I love. I choose peace and possibility and maybe eventually, something like family between all of us. That's asking a lot, Marcus said, but something in his expression had softened. I know, but you owe me this, Marcus, for using me as bait, for refusing to see me as anything but an extension of the family legacy. You owe me the chance to choose my own path. Marcus sighed heavily, then lowered his weapon completely. Okay, we'll try your piece, but I'm not making any promises beyond a truce. That's all I'm asking, Iskander said. He waved a hand and his vampires lowered their weapons as well. We'll draft formal terms, establish the boundaries and tribunal procedures. It won't be easy and there will be violations on both sides as people adjust. But it's better than the alternative. Barely, Marcus muttered, but he was already gesturing for his hunters to stand down. And if you hurt my sister, I won't, Iskander said firmly. She's precious to me, Hunter. Perhaps the most precious thing I've encountered in my long existence. I'd destroy anyone who tried to harm her, including myself. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we're having a very long conversation about your intentions, Vampire King. Brother's prerogative. Despite everything, Penelope laughed. Really? Now you want to play protective brother? Better late than never. Marcus managed a weak smile, and she saw a ghost of the brother she'd grown up with before the crusade had consumed him. I'm sorry, Penny, for everything. For not listening, for using you, for letting hatred blind me to other possibility. I forgive you, she said, and meant it. Just promise me you'll try. Actually try to make this peace work. I will. He looked at Iskander. We both will. Won't we, Vampire King? Yes, Iskander agreed. For her, if nothing else. The tension in the room didn't disappear entirely. Centuries of enmity couldn't be undone in a single conversation, but it eased. Became something manageable, something that could potentially grow into understanding given time and effort. Marcus and his hunters left shortly after, escorted out by Lucien and a contingent of vampires. Not as prisoners but as guests being shown the door. It was a small thing but symbolically huge. When they were finally alone, Iskander pulled Penelope into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. You love me, he said softly, wonder in his voice. I do. Even though you're dramatic and brooding and have spent 3 centuries planning revenge. She smiled up at him. You're also kind and protective and capable of change. How could I not love you? I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. She kissed him, soft and sweet. What now? Now we build something new. Iskander's red eyes were bright. A kingdom where vampires and humans can coexist safely. A relationship between 2 people who shouldn't work but somehow do. A future that isn't defined by the past. That sounds nice. It sounds terrifying, he corrected. I've spent 300 years certain of my path, my purpose. Now you've upended everything, and I have no idea what comes next. We figure it out together, Penelope said. One night at a time, he agreed and kissed her again. In the weeks that followed, the fragile peace held. Marcus and Iskander met for formal negotiations, hammering out the details of the new treaty with Penelope present as mediator. It was tense, uncomfortable, and occasionally devolved into arguments, but they made progress. Boundaries were established, a tribunal system created, protocols for communication put in place. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Penelope split her time between the surface world and the vampire realm, maintaining her work at the gallery while also learning about the society Iskander had built. She met vampires who'd lived for centuries, heard stories of the old world, began to understand the culture her brother had tried to destroy. And every night, she fell deeper in love with the vampire king who'd chosen her over his revenge. I've been thinking, Iskander said one evening as they sat in his private chambers. About the future, always a dangerous pastime, Penelope teased, but her heart raced. I'm immortal, Penelope. I'll live for centuries more, potentially forever. His expression was serious. You're human. Even in the best circumstances, we have perhaps 60 or 70 years together. A blink for someone like me, I know. She'd thought about it too, the impossible math of their relationship, and I want to offer you a choice. He took her hand, his cool fingers gentle. Vampires can create others through a process of death and rebirth. It's not something done lightly. The transformation is painful, and not everyone survives. But those who do gain immortality, strength, powers beyond human comprehension. Penelope's breath caught. You're offering to turn me. I'm offering you the choice, he corrected. If you want to remain human, to live your natural lifespan, I'll treasure every moment we have together. But if you want to stay with me, to see centuries pass, to be my partner in all ways. He paused, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. I would be honored to give you that gift. It's not a gift if I have to die for it. You'd die to be reborn. The vampire you'd become would still be you, your memories, your personality, your soul. Just enhanced, made eternal. His red eyes searched hers. But it's a one-way choice, Penelope. Once made, it can't be undone. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled, small and soft. I have eternity and I'd wait all of it for you. She kissed him, overwhelmed by the enormity of his offer and the certainty in her chest. She didn't need to think about it, not really. She'd already made her choice the moment she'd taken his hand in that parking lot and let him bring her to his kingdom. But she wanted to do this right, to make sure Marcus understood, to say proper goodbyes to the human life she'd be leaving behind. 3 weeks later, she gathered Marcus in a neutral location, a coffee shop in the arts district, mundane and safe. "I need to tell you something," she said, clutching her mug for warmth. Marcus looked wary. "Okay." Iskander offered to turn me, to make me a vampire so we can be together properly. She met her brother's eyes, and I'm going to say yes. The silence stretched long and painful. Marcus's jaw worked, emotions playing across his face too quickly to identify. "You're sure?" he asked finally. "I am. I love him, Marcus, and I want to spend my lives with him." She reached across the table, taking her brother's hand. "But I wanted you to know first, to make sure we're okay before I do this." "Are we okay?" Marcus asked quietly. "After everything, we're getting there. The treaty is holding. The tribunal has handled 3 disputes without violence, and you haven't tried to kill my boyfriend in almost a month. I'd call that progress," he snorted, almost a laugh. "Your boyfriend is the vampire king. I know, it's weird for me too." She squeezed his hand. "But I need to know you'll be okay with this, that you won't see me becoming a vampire as a betrayal." Marcus was quiet for a long time, staring at their joined hands. "I won't lie and say I love the idea. Every instinct I have is screaming that this is wrong, that vampires are dangerous, that I should be trying to talk you out of it, but you're my sister and you're happy. Actually happy, in a way I haven't seen since before Mom and Dad died." He looked up and his eyes were wet. "If this is what you want, if he's what you want, then I'll support you, even though it terrifies me. Thank you." The words felt inadequate for the gift he was giving her. "That means everything. Just promise me something," Marcus said. "Promise that if he ever hurts you, gives you a reason to regret this choice, you'll tell me. Because king or not, treaty or not, I'll tear him apart if he makes you cry." "Deal," she smiled. "Though you should know he's already made me cry. Happy tears, but still. That's different. That's allowed." Marcus stood, pulling her into a hug. "I love you, Penny. Even when I've been a terrible brother, even when I let the crusade blind me, I've always loved you. I know, I love you too." The transformation was scheduled for the following week, giving Penelope time to prepare. She wrote letters to friends, made arrangements for her work at the gallery, said quiet goodbyes to the human life she was leaving behind. Iskander was patient through all of it, supportive without being pushy. He explained the process in detail, the pain, the death, the rebirth. Made sure she understood the risks and the permanence of her choice. "I'm still sure," she told him the night before. "Nervous, but sure." "It will hurt," he warned, holding her close. "The transformation is agony, and there's a chance, small but real, that you won't survive." "I'll survive," Penelope said with confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I'm stubborn that way. You are." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "My brave, beautiful Penelope, I'll be with you through all of it." The transformation took place in Iskander's private chambers, with Lucien present as witness and guard. Penelope lay on the bed, her heart racing as Iskander knelt beside her. "Last chance to change your mind," he said softly. "Not a chance." She reached up, cupping his pale cheek. "Make me yours, properly, completely, forever." His eyes flared red, emotion and hunger and love all mixed together. He leaned down, pressing kisses to her throat, her pulse point, the soft skin above her collarbone. "Forever," he promised and bit down. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. She felt his fangs pierce her skin, felt her blood flowing into him. But beneath the pain was something else, a connection, a bond forming between them. She could feel his love, his fierce protectiveness, his certainty that she would survive this. He didn't take much, just enough to bring her to the edge of death. Then he bit his own wrist, holding it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "Drink and be reborn." The vampire blood tasted like iron and night air and something indefinable. It burned going down, racing through her veins like liquid fire. The pain intensified, her body convulsing as the transformation began. She was dying. She could feel it, her heart slowing, her breath stopping, everything human burning away. Terror gripped her, the animal fear of death, but Iskander's voice cut through the pain. "I've got you. You're safe. Just let go, let the change happen. I'll be here when you wake." So she let go, surrendered to the fire and the darkness and the death that was somehow also rebirth. When Penelope woke, everything was different. The world had gone sharp-edged and vivid, colors more intense, sounds more clear. She could hear Iskander's breathing, Lucien's heartbeat from across the room, conversations happening in distant parts of the kingdom, and she was strong. Power coursed through her limbs, intoxicating and strange. "Penelope?" Iskander's voice, careful and hopeful. She opened her eyes and could see him perfectly in the darkness. His white hair glowed like moonlight, his red eyes burning like coals. He was beautiful, and for the first time she could truly see him as he was, without human limitations obscuring her vision. "I made it," she said, and her voice sounded different, richer, more resonant. "You made it." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "My brave, stubborn love, you survived. Did you doubt I would?" "Every second," he admitted. "Watching you die, even knowing it was necessary, that was the hardest thing I've done in 300 years. She kissed him, tasting blood on his lips, her blood, she realized. But it didn't disgust her the way it should have. Everything was different now, her entire existence rewritten on a fundamental level. "What now?" she asked. "Now we teach you to be a vampire. How to control your strength, how to feed without killing, how to navigate this new existence." Iskander smiled, beautiful and free. "And then we have forever to figure out the rest." "Forever sounds nice." "It does," he agreed. "Especially with you." The weeks that followed were a learning curve. Penelope discovered she had strength that could bend metal, speed that let her move faster than human eyes could track, and senses that made the world impossibly vivid. She also discovered the hunger, the need for blood that was both physical and something deeper. Iskander taught her to feed from willing donors, humans who came to the vampire realm specifically to offer their blood in exchange for money or protection or the thrill of it. It was strange at first, intimate and uncomfortable, but she adapted. She had to. Marcus visited, though seeing his sister with pale skin and red eyes clearly unnerved him. But he kept his promise, supporting her choice even when it obviously cost him. "You look good," he said awkwardly. "Different but good, I feel good," Penelope replied honestly, "strong, capable. Like I finally fit in my own skin, and he's treating you well?" Marcus glanced at Iskander, who stood a respectful distance away, giving them space. "Better than I deserve," she said. "He's patient and kind and completely devoted." "I'm happy, Marcus, really truly happy." "Then I'm happy for you." He hugged her, and if he flinched slightly at her coolness, he didn't mention it. "My sister, the vampire queen. Who would have thought? Queen." Penelope pulled back. "I'm not." "You're the king's consort," Marcus said. "That makes you royalty by default. Better get used to it." After he left, Penelope turned to Iskander. "Am I your queen if you want to be?" He drew her close. "I know we haven't discussed formal titles or ceremonies, but yes, as far as I'm concerned, you're my equal, my partner, my queen in all but name. Then let's make it official." The decision felt right, inevitable. "Let's have a ceremony, a coronation. Something that binds us formally in the eyes of your court. And your brother?" Iskander asked carefully. "A vampire coronation ceremony is not exactly subtle. Marcus will deal. He's getting better at accepting the impossible." So they planned a ceremony, a formal recognition of their bond. It would be part coronation, part wedding, part declaration to both their peoples that the human and vampire worlds could unite in more than just treaties. The night of the ceremony, the grand hall filled with vampires from across the territory, all come to witness their king claim his queen. Penelope wore a dress of deep red, her white hair still strange to see in mirrors flowing loose down her back. Around her throat, a ruby necklace that had belonged to Iskander's mother glittered in the candlelight. Iskander stood at the front of the hall, magnificent in black and silver, his red eyes finding hers across the distance. The love in his gaze made her breath catch, even though she no longer needed to breathe. Marcus attended too, standing awkwardly among the vampires but keeping his promise to support her. Seeing him there in the underground kingdom he'd once sworn to destroy felt like a miracle. The ceremony was conducted by Lucien, who'd served as Iskander's second for 2 centuries and apparently had the authority to perform such rituals. He spoke of bonds and loyalty, of the strength found in partnership, of the future they were building together. "Iskander Dragunov," Lucien said formally. "Do you claim this woman as your queen, your equal, your eternal companion?" "I do," Iskander replied, his voice carrying through the hall. "For however long forever lasts, she is mine and I am hers." "Penelope Brennan," Lucien turned to her. "Do you accept this claim? Do you pledge yourself to this king and this kingdom to stand as queen and partner through whatever may come?" "I do," Penelope said clearly, "now and always." Lucien produced 2 ringed silver bands carved with ancient symbols. "Then by the old laws and the new, I recognize this bond. Let all witness that these two are joined, bound by choice and love in the sacred vows spoken here tonight." Iskander slipped the ring onto her finger, cool metal against cool skin. She did the same for him, the gesture simple but profound. And then he was kissing her, in front of his entire court, with Marcus watching and the weight of centuries of history pressing down. But none of that mattered. Only this: the vampire king and his queen, choosing love over revenge, peace over violence, forever over the finite. When they finally broke apart, the hall erupted in cheers. Even some of Marcus's hunters, who'd been invited as a gesture of goodwill, applauded politely. My queen, Iskander murmured, just for her. My king, she replied, and it felt right. The celebration lasted until dawn sent the vampires retreating to their chambers. Penelope and Iskander retired to their rooms, finally alone after hours of politicking and formal conversations. We did it, Penelope said, still slightly stunned. We actually built something new. We did, Iskander agreed, pulling her close. A treaty between enemies, a kingdom where humans and vampires interact peacefully. A relationship that shouldn't work but does. What happens now? Now we live. He smiled and it transformed his entire face. We have forever, remember? We can do anything, travel, learn, build. We can make this kingdom into something amazing, a real example of coexistence. Or we can do nothing but exist together, enjoying the simple fact of each other's company. Both, Penelope decided. Let's do both. Big, world-changing plans in quiet moments. Adventures in home. Everything, he agreed. For someone who claimed she wanted a quiet life of art and beauty, you've certainly embraced chaos, only the good kind of chaos. The kind that comes from choosing love over hatred, from building rather than destroying. She kissed him softly. You taught me that it's never too late to choose differently, to let go of old wounds and build something new. You taught me that, Iskander corrected. I was content in my revenge until you showed me there was another way. A better way. Then we taught each other. She settled against him, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. Not bad for a vampire king and the sister of his enemy. Not bad at all, he murmured against her hair. Not bad at all. Months passed, then years. The treaty held, growing stronger as both sides learned to trust each other. The tribunal handled disputes fairly, preventing small conflicts from escalating into violence. Marcus eventually stepped down from active hunting, instead helping to train the next generation in the new ways, teaching them to distinguish between threats and innocence, to work with vampires rather than against them. Penelope flourished as queen, using her human perspective to bridge gaps between the two worlds. She established art programs, cultural exchanges, systems that let vampires and humans interact safely and productively. The gallery she'd worked at became a meeting ground, displaying works from both species, celebrating the creativity that existed in all people, living or undead. And through it all, Iskander was beside her. Protective, devoted, still occasionally dramatic, but learning to laugh at himself. He'd spent 300 years defined by revenge, but he spent the centuries that followed defined by love instead. One night, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the underground kingdom they'd built together, Penelope reflected on how much had changed. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Giving up your revenge, choosing peace instead? Never, Iskander replied without hesitation. What I had planned, killing Marcus, destroying the Brennan line that would have given me momentary satisfaction and eternal emptiness. What we built instead. He gestured to the kingdom below, thriving and peaceful. This is a legacy worth having, a future worth living for in me. She smiled up at him. Worth the complication. You were never a complication, he said softly. You were salvation. A light in the darkness, showing me there was more to existence than pain and vengeance. I loved you from the moment you asked me for truth instead of running in fear. I'll love you for every moment that comes after. Forever is a long time, Penelope teased. Not nearly long enough, Iskander replied, and kissed her under the artificial stars of their underground realm. Around them, their kingdom lived and breathed and thrived. Vampires and humans walking the same streets, working together, building something new from the ashes of old hatred. It wasn't perfect, there were still disputes, still those who clung to old prejudices on both sides. But it was better. And it kept getting better. One night at a time, years became decades. Decades became centuries. Through it all, Penelope and Iskander remained constant partners, lovers, king and queen of a kingdom that proved peace was possible. Marcus eventually died peacefully in his sleep at a ripe old age, but not before he'd trained successors who believed in the treaty, who saw vampires as people rather than monsters. The Hunter organization evolved, becoming something more like a police force than an extermination squad. They worked with vampire authorities to handle actual threats, rogues who killed indiscriminately, humans who preyed on vampires, the rare violent conflicts that erupted despite the peace. It wasn't the world William Brennan had imagined when he'd started his crusade. And it wasn't the revenge Iskander had planned for 3 centuries. It was better. On their 100th anniversary, calculated from the night they'd met, not the formal ceremony, Iskander took Penelope back to the surface, to the parking lot where he'd first saved her life. Why here? She asked, looking around at the familiar space. Because this is where everything changed, he said. Where I chose you over my revenge. Where you chose to trust a vampire king who should have been your enemy. Where we started building the future that became our present. It seems smaller than I remember. Penelope mused. Less dramatic, most momentous occasions do in retrospect. He took her hand, cool skin against cool skin. But I wanted to come back here to remember the moment when everything became possible, and she turned to face him fully. What do you remember? Terror, he admitted. Absolute terror at how completely you'd upended my existence in a matter of minutes. I'd planned for 300 years, and suddenly none of it mattered because all I could think about was keeping you safe. I remember being impossibly drawn to you, Penelope said. Even though you were dangerous, even though I should have run. Something in me recognized you, knew you were important. Fate? Maybe. Or maybe just two broken people recognizing that they could heal each other. She kissed him, soft and sweet. Either way, I'm grateful we ended up here, that you chose to save me instead of using me, that I chose to love you instead of fearing you. Best decision I ever made, Iskander murmured against her lips. Second best, she corrected. The best was letting go of your revenge and building something better in its place. Our legacy, he agreed. They stood there for a while, two pale figures in the darkness, remembering the moment that had changed everything. Around them the city lived and breathed, humans and vampires sharing space without fear. It wasn't perfect, would never be perfect, but it was good, and it was theirs. Eventually they returned to their kingdom, to the palace beneath the city where they ruled with justice and compassion. Their court had grown over the decades, vampires coming from around the world to join a society that offered safety and purpose without requiring violence. Penelope had established schools and programs, ways for newly turned vampires to adjust without losing themselves. She'd written books on vampire-human relations, helped draft laws that protected both species. She'd become, in many ways, the bridge between worlds that neither could have built alone. Iskander had used his long experience and natural authority to enforce the peace, showing other vampire lords that coexistence was possible and profitable. He'd negotiated treaties with other territories, spreading their model across regions. He'd become not just a king but a statesman, respected even by those who'd once considered him only a threat. Together they'd built an empire of peace on foundations of pain, and they'd done it all while remaining impossibly, irreversibly in love. What do you want to do tomorrow? Penelope asked that night as they lay together in their chambers. For the next 100 years? Everything, Iskander replied, pulling her closer. I want to see the world change, watch our kingdom grow. I want to learn new things, meet new people, have adventures I can't even imagine yet. And between the grand plans? Between the grand plans, I want quiet moments like this. Nights where we do nothing but exist together, grateful for every impossible second. He kissed her forehead. You make eternity feel too short, my love. Good, Penelope said, smiling against his chest, because I plan on spending every moment of it with you. Promise? Forever and always. Outside their chambers the kingdom thrived. Inside, the vampire king and his queen held each other, two souls who'd found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ruins of hatred. They'd been enemies by legacy, brought together by violence, and had chosen to become partners instead. The road hadn't been easy, peace never was, but it had been worth every difficult moment, because at the end of all the planning and all the pain, all the centuries of vengeance and violence, two people had chosen love instead. And that love had changed the world. Iskander had been sworn to destroy her brother, had spent 300 years planning that destruction. But the vampire king couldn't stop loving his enemy's sister, and that love had saved them all. As dawn approached and they settled into their daily rest, Penelope thought about the girl she'd been human, frightened, attacked in a parking lot. And she thought about the woman she'd become, vampire, queen, partner to the most powerful being she'd ever met. The journey between those 2 points had been impossible and improbable and absolutely perfect. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you, Iskander replied, his arms tightening around her. Now and forever, my beautiful queen, my salvation, my home. They slept as dawn broke above their underground kingdom, two pale figures intertwined, while the world they'd built together thrived around them. A world where hatred had been transformed into hope, where enemies had become family, where love had proven stronger than revenge. It was exactly the ending neither of them had imagined, and exactly the one they both deserved. Forever and always, the vampire king and his queen. Together through all the nights to come, building their impossible happily ever after, one moment at a time. And in the city above and the kingdom below, peace reigned.